The day I first discovered I wasn't invited to my daughter's wedding, I was standing in line at the post office, clutching a package of Dad's specialty barbecue rubs I'd made just for her rehearsal dinner. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister Claire, 5 minutes before I reached the counter. Dad, Mom, and John just finalized the seating chart. You're not on the list. Sorry, they said. Love you. My hand went numb. I pictured Emily in her ivory gown walking down the aisle without me. The elderly lady in front of me glanced back, eyebrows raised. I swallowed and tapped. Are you sure? Then I'll come by tonight. Claire didn't reply. I pocketed my phone, paid for postage, and bought an extra box of tissues on the newsstand. At home, I set my rubs on the kitchen table like a sacrificial altar. I stared at them 10 minutes, willing my heart to cool off. But anger and disbelief tangled inside me so tightly I could taste metal. That evening, I knocked on Claire's door. When she opened it, her lips quivered. Behind her, John hovered with crossed arms. My ex-wife, Rebecca, flitted behind him. I'd hoped Emily might step out and hug me, tell me there'd been a mistake, but the hallway stayed empty, as if sound itself had been banned. Dad, Claire said, voice small. She offered a tentative smile that seemed entirely too brave. I'm sorry. Sorry? I echoed, the word bitter. You cut me out of her wedding. I glanced at Rebecca, who nodded but said nothing. She looked tired in the way people look when guilt has worn a groove into their shoulders. We're protecting Emily's day, Rebecca said. Protecting her from what? Her father's love? I stepped forward, the hallway suddenly too narrow. I've been there for every birthday, every dance recital, every scraped knee. I rubbed her back all night when she had the flu last year. I thought I'd be the one walking her down the aisle. John cleared his throat, finally finding words. Dad, you and Mom divorced 10 years ago. You were never there half the time after that. We're just streamlining things. Claire bit her lip. We love you, Dad. Her eyes watered. But this is what Emily wants. I turned away. My barbecue rubs felt mocking on the table. I realized then that I'd been rehearsing my apology speech. I'll do better, but I didn't owe an apology. I owed explanation. But to what? A family that had decided I didn't matter. I walked home through the dark streets, empty as my racing head. When I reached my front door, I sank onto the stoop and dialed the wedding planner I'd hired months ago as a surprise. Marissa picked up on the second ring. Daniel, hi, everything okay? I pressed the phone to my ear. No, I'm not invited. Not invited. You're the father of the bride. Her voice cracked. They cut me out, I said. Rebecca, Claire, John, they decided I can't walk Emily down the aisle. There was a long silence. Then Marissa whispered, if you gave me the go-ahead, I can slip your name back onto the invitations. No one would ever know. Leave it, I said, voice breaking. I need to think. That night, I lay awake replaying every fight, every missed call, every time I'd put work over family. Guilt and resentment warred in my chest. But beneath it all burned an ember of resolve. If they refused to let me in, I would show them what real power looked like. The next morning, I called Jamal, the videographer I'd hired to document the wedding. He answered with a cheerful, hey, Mr. Sanders, and I willed my voice steady. Make sure you get extra footage of me and Em dancing. You know our goofy father-daughter twirl. He chuckled. Of course, you two have the best moves. I might be a no-show, I said. His laugh died. Don't worry, it's under control. Just capture everything. I hung up and felt the first surge of adrenaline. My plan had begun. Over the next week, I turned every contact in my phone into an ally. I met lunch with the florist, paid her extra to slip my own corsage onto Emily's bouquet. I visited the bakery and asked if they'd swap a single slice of the wedding cake with a secret flavor I'd concocted. My homemade blackberry jam, layered between fluffy vanilla sponge, labeled surprise for the family. I called the DJ and whispered, when you play our song, my girl, you'll announce a special guest appearance. Dad, live from backstage. He laughed at first, then agreed, at a premium rate. Then came the coup de grace. I had the seating chart, Marissa shared in confidence. I bribed the calligrapher to send me a copy of the guest name tags. Then I sat at my kitchen table for hours, red pen in hand, artistically crossing out my family's names. Rebecca, Claire, John, and replacing them with my own alias, Anthony Reed. I wired a last-minute delivery to the venue. 9 black leather jackets, each monogrammed with Anthony Reed on the inside collar. The day before the wedding, I dropped by the Rosewood estate under the guise of Anthony Reed, special guest coordinator. The receptionist, who recognized my face but not the name, ushered me politely into the back office. Marissa was there, looking frazzled. I gave her a tight smile. "Marissa, I wanted to thank you for all your hard work. I'm so sorry about yesterday's confusion." I slipped her a check. She glanced at the amount, then up at me, eyes wide. "No problem, Mr. Reed. We'll get everything set." I patted her shoulder. "One more thing, that USB I left in your inbox. It's a compiled highlight reel of our family memories. For the slideshow, they wanted a surprise." She nodded, relieved. "I'll hand it to the DJ." I left her gulping, and as I walked past the bridal suite, I overheard Claire's voice. "I'm sure Dad will show up eventually. You can't hide him forever." Her laugh was brittle, an admission of her own worry. That evening, back at my apartment, I laid out the 9 jackets in a semicircle on the living room floor. I unzipped one, revealing the smooth satin lining and the name tag stitched in silver thread. Anthony Reed. It felt like a uniform for an army, I commanded. I set the last jacket aside and opened my laptop. I assembled the video footage Jamal had already shot at dress fittings, rehearsals, father-daughter dinner nights. I footnoted each memory with faded photographs I'd scanned. One of Emily at age 5, painting my toenails, another of her sneaking popcorn into my job site lunch break. Interspersed were clips of my siblings whispering about me at family gatherings, texts where Claire called me pathetic, voicemails from Rebecca telling me I should stay out of Emily's life. I overlaid the entire sequence with our song, My Girl, fading from the original, gentle arrangement into a staccato remix that sounded like nervous heartbeats. I rendered the file and saved it onto the same USB I'd given Marissa. Then I packed a small duffel, tuxedo rented and fitted under Reed, slip-on shoes, a pocket square embroidered with a single word, forgiven. On the morning of the wedding, I drove to the estate, turning my face into the rearview mirror and tilting it until I recognized Anthony Reed's profile, square jaw, steely eyes, calm expression. I felt my own face settle into that disguise, like leather stretched over metal. I parked in the vendor lot, slipped into the jackets, and approached the side door labeled staff entrance. The guard gave me a nod. Reed was expected. I handed over my false ID, tying up loose ends in my new identity. Inside, I found Marissa, hovering by a folding table, eyes rimmed red. In her hand, my rubs. Someone must have dispatched them with a note. For the cook. She beamed at me. I squeezed her hand. "Everything's perfect." She looked down at her watch. "The ceremony starts in an hour. The slideshow is cued right after the toasts." I nodded, heart hammering. "Can't wait." I slipped away down a corridor and peeked through a door into the main hall. White chairs lined 2 aisles, soft petals scattered on the carpet. At the front, an arbor of roses framed a trellis. Guests chatted in hushed tones. And there, at the head table, my siblings and Rebecca clustered, glancing at the empty stage. I smiled to myself. They thought they'd banished me. But in a few minutes, as my daughter walked down the aisle, escorted by Anthony Reed, they'd see me, every memory, every slight, every unspoken apology, projected across the screens on either side of the arbor. They'd watch themselves diminish as my love for Emily filled the room. I straightened my shoulders, feeling every thread of that jacket tighten me into purpose. I checked my phone, a single message from Claire. "Where are you?" I left it unread. The door to the vendor hallway slid open, and the guard called, "Anthony, they're ready for you at the soundboard." I nodded, picking up my duffel and heading toward the control room. The glass window offered a view of the ceremony chairs, still empty, still waiting. I paused before I entered. My reflection stared back, neither Daniel nor Anthony, something forged in the space between love and vengeance. I took a breath, fingers curling around the duffel strap. Then I stepped inside, closing the door behind me, and let the final act begin. The room went quiet as My Girl faded and the slideshow began. Only it wasn't the florist's pastel montage. Instead, the first frame displayed a smiling little face, not my daughter, but my wife, years ago, handing me a ketchup-splattered burger. Then Emily at 5, perched on my shoulders, shrieking with delight at the zoo. Then the 3 of us building sandcastles, her tiny hand covered in glue from arts and crafts. The guests leaned forward, whispers rippling up the aisles. "What is this? Is this part of the program?" As the images shifted, the tone deepened. Footage of the bridal dress fitting gave way to my ex-wife's voice, clipped and anxious. "I don't know why he won't let this go." Then Claire, voice trembling. "He's pathetic." Then John, curt text on screen, "Stay out of her life." Each snippet overlaid with the ambient hum of the wedding hall. as if I'd stolen their voices from the hall's own speakers. A murmur ran through the crowd when the screen cut to a shot of the empty guest tables. My family's seats, labeled Rebecca, Claire, John, blank white spaces where names should have been. Then I saw it, the corsage. The florals I'd bribed the florist to sew into Emily's bouquet lay perched on her wrist. The camera zoomed in on the single blossom. A white rose I had whispered to the florist was her mother's favorite, nestled in her delicate hand. Behind me, the DJ's voice crackled. And now, ladies and gentlemen, a special guest, Anthony Reed. The lights dimmed, leaving the arbor faintly illuminated. Then 9 figures emerged from the wings, stepping into the soft glow, each draped in the same black leather jacket with Anthony Reed embroidered on the lining. They moved in a choreographed line, 9 silent, identical shadows inching toward the center aisle. The hall gasped, chairs scraped. My siblings froze, jaws slack. My ex-wife's hand flew to her mouth. Claire's eyes widened, and John's face went pale. I slipped out of the control room, ducking past the last technician, jacket collar turned up. I merged with the line of Reeds, walking toward the front like a dark tide pushing through stunned silence. Down the aisle, Emily stood in her gown, bouquet held at her waist, expression unreadable. The groom shifted beside her, confusion flickering across his face. The guests craned their necks. One by one, the 9 Reeds stopped in a perfect arc before the arbor and dropped their heads. On the screen, the final frame appeared. My own face, half lit, smiling. Text scrolled beneath. For Emily, nothing can keep us apart. Then the video cut, plunging the room into blackness. The music dropped out, silence hit like a wave. Heartbeat pounding, I peeled off the jacket and tossed it aside. Underneath, I was no longer Anthony Reed. I was Daniel Sanders, Emily's father, the man they tried to lock out. I stepped forward, voice full. Emily, she blinked. Her veil lay pristine, her cheeks wet with tears, not from the day, but from confusion. Dad, I kicked off my shoes and slipped from the line of reeds, holding out a single black jacket, unzipped to reveal the name tag, Daniel. I closed the gap between us. I never stopped being your father, I said softly. No seating chart, no restraining order, and not 9 imposters can change that. Her eyes flooded. She looked at the jagged line of guests, her mother, her aunt, her brother, all of them still frozen in shock, and then back to me. Why? I gestured past me, toward the discarded leather. I wanted them to see what it felt like to be locked out. I wanted you to know I would walk through any door, even one that didn't welcome me. I swallowed. I love you, always have. And no wedding gift, no barbecue rub, no corsage swap means as much as this moment right here. At that, something in the hall shifted. A woman at the front table stood, our neighbor, Mrs. Patel, who I'd asked to chaperone when I was too hurt to attend rehearsal. She whispered something, and then another guest rose, my wife Rebecca. She stepped forward, shoulders folded but resolute. I'm sorry, she said, voice tremulous. I thought we were protecting her. I thought I was doing right by her. She turned to Emily. Honey, her gaze flickered to me. I never meant for this. I love you both. Claire stood next, brushing stray tears from her cheeks. Dad, I was wrong. I was scared of rocking the boat, of making waves, but I forgot what matters. She dropped to one knee, pulling off her own jacket, plain cotton, hand-me-down. I was so sure I was doing this for Emily, but I was doing it to suit me. John followed, voice cracking. Dad, I'm sorry, you're my father, you always have been. His hand went to the empty seat with his name on it, and he shook his head. Can't believe I let them take that from me, and from you. The guests looked on, many wiping tears. The groom, pale and uncertain, stepped forward. He extended his hand to Emily. Do you want to start over? He asked. With your dad by your side? Emily looked at him, then back at me. For a long moment, I held my breath. Then she slipped her fingers into my hand. I want you, Dad, she said, voice steady now. She looked to her groom. And I want you too. He nodded, stepping back to give us room. My ex-wife slipped her hand into mine. The room softened, as if the walls themselves exhaled. The officiant, previously forgotten at the altar, cleared his throat. Then let us begin again. Someone cued My Girl on the speakers, that gentle Motown melody filling the hush. I lifted Emily's veil, leaned in, and kissed her forehead. She laughed, bright, clear, and I spun her around. The crowd cheered. The leather jackets scattered like cast-off armor. Throughout the reception that followed, I watched as my family reclaimed their seats. Rebecca draped her arm around me. Claire danced with her husband, then pulled me in for a hug so tight I wondered if she'd hold on forever. John gave me a wink from across the table, silent camaraderie renewed. Later, as the night wore on, I slipped into the kitchen and found Marissa. She slipped me a slice of that secret blackberry jam cake. "In case you need a sweet moment," she whispered. I bit into it. Warm fruit, sponge melting on my tongue. It was almost too perfect. Almost. I thought of the barbecue rubs still cooling in their jars, waiting for a less dramatic day. I thought of the 9 jackets, now crumpled in a corner, and the electricity in the air as I reclaimed my place. I thought of Emily's face, radiant in that moment of reunion. By the end of the night, when the last guest drifted away under soft lantern light, there was no grand pronouncement of forgiveness. No bouquets of roses handed back or confessions screamed. Instead, there was the simple, solid click of a door closing gently behind the caterers, the murmur of crickets outside, and the warmth of my daughter's head resting on my shoulder as we sat on the curb, sharing leftovers and laughter. A few hours later, the house finally silent, Emily and I sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around coffee mugs. She looked at me, eyes shining, and said, "Thank you for fighting for me." I folded her hand in mine. "Always." And as dawn eased through the window, painting the kitchen in hope, I realized revenge isn't about hurt or payback. It's about making those who pushed you out remember who you really are, and then showing them mercy. Because love, like vengeance, is something you earn over and over again. And no matter how many times they tried to cast me aside, my place in my daughter's life was never just a seat on a chart. It was every laugh we ever shared, every tear I wiped away, every father-daughter twirl, real, imperfect, and forever ours.